Good morning and welcome to Mystical Teachings from the Tanya. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We say good morning to Darren, or good evening to you, Darren, in the Philippines. John in North Carolina is with us. Robert, shalom to you in Boston. Julie is with us in Florida. Erica, shalom to you in Norway. Michael, good evening to you in Germany. Matt is with us in Detroit, shalom. Liba and Davida, good morning in New York. Eugenia is with us in Calgary, Boker Tov. And we have Clem in Brisbane. Welcome. And we have June, also in Australia. Good evening. Irma is with us in St. Martin. Alice is with us in Sunshine, Baltimore. Betty, good morning. Tim in Texas, welcome. Brad is with us in Maryland. Who else is joining us? Diane in London, Ontario. That's on Facebook. We have with us Clubhouse, Batya and Vilma, Mare, Lindsay, Michelle, Tim, Samuel, Yana, David, Winston. We also have with us Yenta Telebenta on Instagram. Derwin, good evening to you from Indonesia. Welcome in Uruguay. We have Flora. In regards to the Shem Tovs. Mashiach. Now we have Akoy in Peru. All right, from all over the world, beautiful people joining us. Quite amazing every day. Alan in Kansas, Elisheva in Arizona City, and Darina in Colorado, and many more. Okay, folks, we continue in the 12th letter. Yesterday we spoke about having a sampling of something that we will all have in the time to come, in times of Mashiach, where God's presence will be palpable, will be real, so much so that all evil will not be present. It'll be all eradicated. All evil will be eradicated. Just a note on that. There aren't two forces. So it's not like, a battle over here between two opposing forces. Because the forces of evil are forces of God. That God gives the capacity for evil to be perpetrated. Ultimately, because we need to refine it. And by our refinement, we eradicate the negativity and then allow only the positive, which the positive means the light of God, to emerge, to be revealed. And that's what we're here to do. So we can get an experience, a little flavor of that in our prayers when we do one of two things. Either we study Torah Lishma, learning Torah for as an end in itself, to connect to God, to bring that connection into this world. And secondly, by charity, tzedakah. And that's where we're going today. We're going to continue with that notion about tzedakah. And we're going to tie that in to what it means, the act of charity. Okay? That's where we're going to go. And then we're going to go into another level of what it means to be giving. So now we're talking about the nature of giving. Well, the nature of giving, the Alter Rebbe explains, is, and the Alter Rebbe is speaking about Jewish people, because that's who he wrote primarily these teachings, although, these teachings can and should be affecting all of humanity. But he speaks in form of the uniqueness of the Jewish soul and the capacity, and therefore, as a result, the capacity for that soul to give. So, says that the very nature of the Jewish soul is to act compassionately and to perform acts of loving kindness. Parenthetically, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say this, but the Talmud says that if you see a Jew who is not kind and compassionate, check their lineage. Okay, we could corrupt the nature, but this is the nature. And why is this though? Why is it that the Jewish soul? What do you mean? There's something different about a Jewish soul. So he explains that the attributes of God are not merely part of the soul. They, so to speak, define the soul. And just like in heaven, chesed prevails over gvura, kindness prevails over harshness, judgment, tzimtzum, contraction, holding back. As it says in Tehillim, his chesed, his kindness, God's kindness prevails. So therefore, the Jewish soul, which is called Nishama Bas Kohen, the soul of the daughter of a Kohen, Kohen meaning a priest. It's a metaphor just like the Kohanim were to be kind people to bless the people, the Kohens, the priests, to bless the people. That is special power in priestly blessings. So the soul derives from that dominant power that is reflected in the attributes of God, of kindness and compassion. And that's the very nature of the soul. Okay? Now, we're speaking here about tzedakah, being charitable, that's coming from this nature of the Jewish soul, that's inherent to the soul, the kindness and the compassion. This isn't, therefore, the reference of Maaseh HaTzedakah, the act of charity. So the Alter Rebbe explains, an act, Maaseh in Hebrew, it applies to something that's already done or that it's constantly being done spontaneously. In other words, something that's common, that's there, and constant. So here too, in reference to tzedakah, to being charitable, the motivation is the soul's innate sense of kindness and compassion that's implanted within the soul from, in other words, not of our own making, but it's there, and therefore it's common, and therefore it is constant. As it says in the verse, that God blew into the nostril the breath of life, meaning blowing is a metaphor that it's, as opposed to everything else in creation, God spoke, but the DNA of the Jewish soul is that God blew a piece of him into it, into the innermost aspects, becoming the DNA of the very soul. This, in an inward way, these divine attributes. And furthermore, God renews the act, Maaseh, the act of creation, every single day, every moment, meaning constantly infusing the soul with this attribute of kindness and compassion. So that is the act of charity, meaning the constant process of the renewal of the soul that is renewing the soul with its characteristic of kindness and compassion, and therefore giving charity by virtue of the innate quality of the soul, the inherent the inherent value of the soul, giving charity in that regard. Now, there's not giving giving it because it's inherent, innate to us. Now the Alter Rebbe continues and says there's another way of giving. It's called avodas tzedakah. The avodah meaning the service. What does that imply? Service implies exertion. Not what's natural, not which is innate to the person, but an immense exertion. In other words, overriding the natural tendency of the individual and doing something out of the deference of the supreme will of God. So, for example, an exhaustive attempt to pray to God or to study Torah like now, right? Exhaustive in the sense that there's a real focus, there's a real giving over, you're not, your mind and heart and your will is not somewhere else. Yeah, it's not just on autopilot, so to speak, as the previous, right? Here, giving tzedakah, giving charity in this manner, entails a lot more than what is natural to the person to give. Not prompted by one's natural desire to be kind and compassionate, but to give and to give and to give, as our sages say, give, you shall give. Nasan titain. Give, you shall give, even 100 times. In other words, in an exhaustive manner, beyond the nature of the individual. Okay, that's the teachings. Let's unpack it. So the first thing I want to bring up and to discuss is the nature of giving over here that we're talking about, of the Jewish soul. So what comes out over here, and this is an important point to appreciate. The Jewish soul is different. It has a uniqueness to it. Without getting into all the details, it's not, in other words, the charity, the compassion and the kindness that comes from the Jew is not merely a learnt exercise. I learned from my parents, they were charitable, so I give also, right? And my parents, they learned from their parents to be charitable. So, it's something that is part of our teachings, part of our value system. It's true, it is part of a value system, as a matter of fact. Yes, you got to give 10% minimum, 20%, preferred even. So, yeah, it is part of the value system. But, and not only that, in the times where the Jewish court has dominion, it can assess a person to give much more than they want to give, and actually compel them to give. How can you compel? Well, because democracy is not a God-given, a God-given right. Because it's mitzvah in the Torah, and therefore we have to. So, but anyway, that's not my point. The point that I want to bring out is, yes, it's our values, but but the values are really an expression of who we are by nature, inherent to the Jewish soul. So inherent to the Jewish soul, again, is kindness and compassion, to be giving. It is the DNA. It's, again, not merely a learned thing. What comes first, chicken or the egg? What comes first? The values or the inherent nature. What comes first, nature or nurture? So everybody today wants to bring out about nurture. No, because nurture can only be nurturing of a nature. You can't nurture a nature that's not already there. Now, it might be very deep and to bring it out, but it's got to be there. So this is the first thing that I think is hugely important. I brought this out before, but just like here in Montreal, there's about 85,000, 90,000 Jews, and the giving here, and it's not just here. I'm just giving the example there, for I know what's going on here. Out of 85,000 Jews, 90, let's say, just the Federation itself, let alone all the Jewish General Hospital and all the Israeli institutions and the schools and Chabad. So just that one institution raises 45, that's the central arm of fundraising for the Jewish community, raises like $45 million a year from that amount of people. Trade, which is the general organization, not the only one. There's also, a bunch of hospitals, there's museums, and there's, universities and so on, that a lot of fundraising goes on, right? But from that central organization, there is only $50 million, maybe $5 million more, from like 3.5 million people. Why do I bring that? It's not to put down anybody, but I just want to bring out the uniqueness of the Jewish soul in its giving and compassion. And what I'm emphasizing, because our natural take on it is, because that's what the good book says, and that's what we'll be teaching. We teach that, we nurture that. It's true, we nurture it because we have a nature that's being nurtured. Didn't come out of nowhere. Oh, the good book says it, so I'll do it even though it's not my nature. No. The good book says it. The Torah tells us. Why? Because it's reflecting our nature. That's what it is. So that's the first point I want to bring out that I feel is very important. Now, being that that's our nature means we just give, and give, and give. The nature of giving is that. But then there's something greater. Not just being giving out of the nature that we have, but out of avodah, exertion, and effort. And this is the idea of giving when it's not so comfortable, beyond our nature. When we feel a little of the squeeze. Then that's avodah, that we have to put a little effort into it. Then we know there's something beyond giving what our nature is. So yes, we have a nature, but the whole point is not to be giving based just on your nature. That's wonderful. But to be giving in a way that you're serving God. The service of tzedakah then is that there's an effort. Avodah means engagement, effort, exhaustive work. That's what avodah is, right? Exhaustive work. So imagine in that area that we exhaust ourselves in giving. That so it means we feel it. There's a little pinch, and that's what we're really here for. Ultimately, is to go beyond our nature, and that's tomorrow we're going to learn more about that to get more clarity on that. We'll wait for tomorrow. Okay. Questions, comments, thoughts, ideas. 2 question marks before a question on Facebook or Instagram. Please remember that. I didn't see, and don't forget, I know now that. Let's see. anybody on Instagram have a question that I didn't see? 2 question marks first, please. Alice, is there a point in discussing the overkindness and compassion of our enemies, nature of the Jew, or Erev Rav? What does it mean, overkindness of compassion of our enemies? Now, by the way, that doesn't mean that, if you're not Jewish, that you can't be kind and compassionate. That's not what it means, of course, obviously, right? Because a non-Jewish soul also is a creation of God. So, it doesn't mean that there isn't, of course there's kind and compassionate people of all walks of life. So, Alice, I don't understand your question. You have to excuse me. Don't get it. Okay, let's see. Jeffrey, anything to share with us? Vilma, Batya, who else? Everybody's quiet today. Tomorrow we're going to wrap up things on this in this letter, connecting the act of charity, which is meaning giving by nature, produces peace. The the avodah of tzedakah, the service of tzedakah, the effort of being of tzedakah, it brings you to quietness and surety. What is the distinction between those things, and what does that mean exactly? We'll see that tomorrow in the wrap-up of this letter. Darren, is being compassionate, does it have a limit? Well, human compassion will most likely have a limit. Will definitely most likely have a limit. Does it have to have a limit? It doesn't have to have a limit. I mean, yeah. God's compassion, not necessarily. Yes, correct. Winston. This is the first sentence of the blessing before Torah study. When it's applied, bless you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, has sanctified us with the commandment, and His command us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Yes. So the question being, or that was a statement. Okay? Yes. Make those blessings. Absolutely. Thank you. Says Julie says, too much of anything is not good. Yeah, usually the Rambam, he says you have to be balanced. Unless when it comes to haughtiness. Shouldn't be balanced with that. Or anger. But yes, generally speaking. All right. Quiet today on all fronts. Well, when is this blessing applicable? Before studying Torah, we say it in the morning blessings. Okay. All right, Winston, I hope that's clear. Any other questions? Now, so just with the question that you asked about compassion, Darren, so maybe better way to put it, not always should you use your power of compassion. I've used this example, one of the hats I wear is a Talmudic cap. And another hat I wear is running a addiction center for addicts and families. Um, so to be compassionate to an addict might kill them. Out of compassion, you're going to give them the $100. What are they going to do with that $100 if they're an addict? You're going to use it for drugs. Give them food, it's one thing. Giving them money is another thing. So it's not so much is there a limit to the compassion, is that I think the question might be more often than not, is this a person or a situation that I should be compassionate? Sometimes not. I would say more often than not, compassion is an appropriate response. Um, an appropriate response um, to a situation. You know, I'm giving like, a drug addict. No. Sometimes it's, we have to have compassion and kindness is more often than not. That's why, we have a right hand. It's the stronger hand, so it's the more dominant hand. And after, the more dominant hand, the right hand, right, is kindness, so it's more dominant and stronger. The left hand is weaker, right? By the way, if you're a lefty, then your right hand is your left. It's meaning your dominant hand, right? So the left hand is weaker, meaning gvura, withholding, making that judgment call, is the weaker hand. Is there a place for it? Yes, that's why we have a left hand, with a weaker to create those boundaries, to push away that which needs to be pushed away, to be judgmental on things that need proper judgment, so you can create boundaries. Without judgment, you can't create boundaries, right? Because kindness is an indiscriminate form of giving that knows no boundaries, is, the kind of kindness we're talking about over here. Okay, I hope that was clear. I see something else. So, Trisha, thank you for sharing. Addiction is an illness. That's true. Aware of that. Compassion is always needed. No, again, I just gave an example where an inappropriate compassion, where compassion is not needed. Don't have compassion for a drug addict and give them money. You have compassion in another way you could, but I'm giving that by way of example, right? So that's the um, so yeah, sometimes a tough love. All right, that's it then. I want to thank everybody for joining. Reminder, today's Rambam. Today's Rambam is going back to regular things that are understood by simple people like me. Join us at 12:45 for continued learning. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you with Chabad, Zichron Kadesh, in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining.